Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is said that when the president of Tanzania, the late Julius Nyerere, was told in 1969 that the Americans had sent an astro an aircraft in a spacecraft to the moon. He is said to have responded, the Americans have gone to the moon and we are still failing to reach the village. That was really incisive. He was, in that single sentence, summing up Africa's biggest problem. We've always lagged behind, way behind. I'll just play a short video clip of the Americans actually landing on the moon.
Good, going over the hill. Okay, engine stop. Copy you down, Eagle. Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Twink. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
It was indeed a giant leap for mankind. And Julius Nyerere fully appreciated it, but also fully appreciated the problems that Africa had. We are still failing to reach the village, he said. In 1980, Julius Nyerere was one of the African leaders who went to Zimbabwe to witness Zimbabwe's independence. And it is said that he told Robert Mugabe that you have inherited the jewel of Africa. Don't spoil it. Zimbabwe in 1980 was an upper middle income country. We're on its way to really become a well developed country, economically rich. We had the resources. Our agriculture produced enough food to feed the entire nation and our neighbors. And we competed with big countries like America in producing crops, commercial crops like tobacco. We competed very well with them. And we had a very robust economic infrastructure. So that a Japanese scholar, Ken Yamamoto, who traveled quite extensively in Zimbabwe and studied the country in those early years, came with the conclusion that Zimbabwe could become the South Korea of Africa in terms of economic development. Alas, that was not to be. Last 44 years have seen Zimbabwe's economy in ruins. 44 years of gross mismanagement and rampant corruption have destroyed the economy. The lawlessness characterized by the blatant rigging of elections have left the country labeled a pariah state. In about 2 weeks' time, SADC leaders will be going to Zimbabwe for the regional summit. And if the late Julius Nyerere was still alive, he could have been one of the delegates, I suppose. I think he would have been disappointed to see what has happened to the jewel of Africa. We in Zimbabwe, instead of making advances in the last 44 years since our independence, getting from one village to another, we have regressed. The robust infrastructure we inherited in 1980 is in a sorry state. Zimbabwe's health and education services have all but collapsed. The roads are in a sorry state. Even some of the A roads, they are in a sorry state. Last year, the country held its elections, which Mnangagwa blatantly rigged. Even the regional body, election observer team, and the continental body dismissed the process as flawed. If the opposition had not participated and conned Zimbabweans to participate in their millions, I think SADC would have denied ZANU-PF political legitimacy. But what do you do if the entire country participate in the flawed elections? Chamisa told his followers that he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. ZANU-PF was not going to rig these elections. Triple C was going to win big. Of course, he was lying. He has been lying all along. In 2018, he said a similar lie, that MDC alliance had stringent measures to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. Only the day after the elections, he was the first one to complain that ZANU-PF had rigged the elections. There's no doubt that Zimbabwe is a failed state. It is ironic in many ways that the technology has moved on. Americans have not only come up with spacecraft to explore all the planets on our solar system, but they've gone beyond that. They have the technology to split the smallest material, the atom, into its constituent components and study them closely. It is said that the technology, the computing power in some of the mobile phones, at least, is more powerful than the computer that was used to guide and fly Apollo 11 to the moon and come back. It doesn't mean, of course, that we in Africa are now in a better position to fly to the moon. We have become consumers of technology. With all that technological advances, in a country like Zimbabwe, I can honestly say that it is even more difficult to reach the next village than it was in 1980. That is tragic. And what is worse, we don't seem to learn, because Zimbabwe is gearing for the 2028 elections. And although SADC and all the election observers have emphasized the need to implement reforms so that the election process is free, fair, and credible, ZANU-PF is not interested in implementing any reforms. ZANU-PF will never reform itself out of office. And the opposition, on the other hand, they had the golden opportunity to implement reforms during the 2008 to 2013 GNU. They failed to implement even one reform. And ever since, they've been participating in flawed elections to give ZANU-PF legitimacy and return for a few gravy train seats. And they've conned their followers to participate. As much as Chamisa has been complaining that ZANU-PF rigged the 2023 elections, it will be a day's work to convince his followers to participate in the 2028 elections. He only has to tell them he has come up with yet another set of strategies to stop ZANU-PF winning rigged elections. And the people will believe him. It really is tragic. We don't seem to learn anything at all. I think Julius Nyerere was right. We seem to have a serious problem. While others are advancing, we are stuck. The technology, the cooperation, the ingenuity required to send a man to the moon and come back is the quantum leap others have made. And we are still struggling to reach the village. only a kilometer away. How sad. How tragic. Thank you very much for joining me tonight, and have a good day.